improve cooperation. That is fine. Turkey has Turkey Africa Forum. Japan has Tokyo International Conference on African Development. These are important engagement fora at which development assistance, at which investment, at which cooperation beyond just making money or beyond just promoting the private sector to come and make money in Africa are discussed. And I think these are important. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good policy. It is important to maintain a balance with the East, with the West, and with Africa. But most critically, it is important to look at ourselves and say, we have the resources. We have now the educated people. Our skills level is going up all the time. Then maybe they should, at some point, whether in the West or Asia, say, we are looking Africa. Because I think that is what is happening at this stage. Yes. They are looking at Africa, not just to come and get the resources and go and process there, to come and process in here, to come and help us start and ensure that we know how to add value to the very wonderful natural resources we have in our continent for the benefit of developments in Africa.
All right. When you look at, like you say, have a balance between the West and the East and Africa, and indeed, globally, do you think, and I think this was the sentiment that was raised at the AU summit, that the relations between the West and Africa have not been fair, have not been balanced, and like you said, it should be that they're not just coming to take resources away, but that it should be something that benefits us mutually. Do you think it's been a mutually beneficial relationship between the West and Africa up until this point?
I think from the African perspective, I'll say we have been on a learning curve. Traditionally, it has been about getting resources, processing them elsewhere, outside Africa. And therefore, the only little value we got was from the exchange, which brought a little bit of revenue. But the value chain was not such beneficial for Africa. I'm glad to say, when you take the case of Botswana, for instance, when we mine diamonds, we used to be just only involved in exploration and mining in partnership with foreign companies. Now, Botswana is involved in exploration, in mining, in rough trading. We stopped at rough trading because that was as far as negotiating with the buyers of the diamonds, giving them a price. Then thereafter they will go and cut and polish, they will trade in polished, they will manufacture jewelry, and they will be involved at the retail end. So the value chain was more beneficial at the other end. We are now in Botswana at a stage where, as I mentioned, we are involved in mining, exploration, rough trading, cutting and polishing. And I'm happy to tell you that 21 companies from all over, from the East, from the West, which used to be the centers of excellence as far as the cutting and polishing diamonds, are now established in Botswana. This is the value, this is a beneficiation drive that we have been driving in attempts to diversify our economy away from just mining and exporting diamonds. So if 21 companies from all over the world can come and set in Botswana and employ more than 4,000 people as we speak now, that is progress. That is progress. We have now a few that are taking interest in jewelry manufacturing. We have one huge Indian giant, a global player, setting up a jewelry manufacturing factory in Botswana. They started 2 years ago. And we are slowly getting value from the chain and adding value to the natural resources that were, after all, just mined and exported. Now we are benefiting at most levels of the value chain. That is important. And I think in Africa, this should be the way.
Okay. Speaking about diamonds, and you rightly said these were discovered right after gaining independence. You know the curse of these rare gemstones and these valuable resources being discovered. I believe they say where these are discovered, death, pestilence, and poverty will follow, and it rarely ever benefits the people of the country themselves. Perhaps some advice or some insights into how that was able to work in Botswana? Reason being because we have just discovered oil in Turkana, and we're beginning that process. And of course, we are starting to have the discussions around, so how does this benefit the people in Turkana? How does this benefit all Kenyans as a whole, to the point where we don't get to fight for these resources? How is it that in Botswana, we haven't seen the war for black diamonds as we have seen in other countries in Africa?
When we share our story of how we did it, we are not suggesting that it can be universally applicable to every situation. But what I would say is our first president, the diamonds, by the way, were discovered in 1965. When we got self-rule that year, he was still the prime minister, and the mining started in 1967. He spent 2 years negotiating with the chiefs everywhere to make them see the importance of ceding the rights to own and say these are in our part of the land, and therefore they should benefit the people in our part of the land, to the state. And therefore, only after he had passed a law, or ensured that a law was passed by Botswana Parliament ceding mining rights to the state as the custodian who will manage them on behalf of the country, was he confidently now able to say, we can start the mining. Now, the fact that we were able to marshal that nation-building process meant that any revenue derived from these natural resources was used to provide developments in any part of the country. Yes, the communities around which mines and other in extractive industries take place would benefit in terms of employment, the infrastructure that goes there. So it might look in some cases that they are benefiting more than the others, but the greater part of the revenue was used to provide infrastructure for the rest of the country, the services to the people, the clinics and schools. I mentioned that there were like 3 secondary schools. There are now more than 320 secondary schools in Botswana. There were only 3 at independence. This was the revenue from diamonds, which ensured that schools and clinics and hospitals were built. There are more than 10 major hospitals in the country.
So it has got to be able to benefit the people.
Yes.
And some of the revenue from that has got to go into development of the communities?
Yes, yes. Okay. Development projects which provide infrastructure that enables goods and services to be moved around the country. Botswana is a vast country. In fact, last time I had tiny African state, Botswana, and my understanding of a state is a state has to have a nation, it's a territory, there's sovereignty, and there's the other element which I forgot. So the government, the government. So when you look at this, the size instead of the population, Kenya is big. When you look at the geographical size, you know, Botswana is almost the same size as Kenya.
Yeah.
781,000 something square kilometers. Kenya is 582,000 approximately. Kenya is slightly 582,646 square kilometers.
Right.
So almost the same size. So when you talk of size, it depends whether you're looking at the territory or you're looking at the population. Population-wise, definitely.
Your population is far much more than ours.
So the terrains were very difficult, and therefore to get goods from one smaller tribe to the other in the far end. So we had to build roads. And the revenue from diamonds was very critical, very, very critical.
Okay.
If we didn't have diamond money, we wouldn't have the infrastructure we have in Botswana.
But it's about using that to benefit the communities, to build infrastructure, schools, health centers.
And having the appropriate legislative framework to administer that, and being committed to the constitutional democracy that we established. It was very critical. And the example set by the leadership in addressing corruption. Because consistently for the past 11 years, can you believe it, Botswana has been rated the least corrupt country in Africa. The past 11 years. We're very proud of that. We want to see the most of the African countries be
go the same way.
such.
And so my final question to you, Your Excellency, this morning is, throughout our discussion this morning, you've raised the issue of leadership quite a bit and talking about how important that is. And I think across the continent, this is something we're talking about, this is something we're battling with, the role of leadership in terms of bringing communities together, in terms of ending issues like tribalism. These are things I think all African countries are grappling with, including Kenya. We've just come from, an election, and elections, as you know, usually divide the people because it is a process that's subjective. You're picking one candidate or the other that will determine the leadership. Just what are your thoughts on the role of leadership in Africa and how key that is to ending all of these vices that we're talking about: corruption, tribalism, nepotism, and lack of development. Just your final thoughts on how key leadership is in Africa.
African leadership transformed from the leadership of tribes to national leadership, which was to be responsible for nation building and uniting all these various diverse groups into one nation around a common agenda and a vision. The most important thing that a leader can provide in any nation is a vision, a clear vision in which the people from all walks of life have had an input, a national vision mobilized around what the leader shared in terms of his views about how he can move the country forward, but most importantly, sharing those having consulted with the people. So consultation is at the heart, and the leader has to lead by example. Any leader that tolerates corruption and is not forthright and swift in addressing it, and doesn't ensure that his government or his country has the right framework to deal with corruption. Any leader that, when in power, forgets that they are in that seat, they are as good as the people thought they were when they first put them there. Any leader that does not respect term limits would be really a sad story for Africa. I think by and large, we are having a very healthy debate about term limits. Most leaders in Africa now are understanding that it is important to not only sit there and sit there forever, build a legacy and bequeath the generation that will take after you a legacy that they can take and improve for the betterment of the fortunes of your people, the fortunes of this continent. Any leader who is up there should be concerned about growing others. When you get there, perhaps it's about you. It's about you and rising maybe in the party, in the other structures to be there. But once you are there, it's about growing others. That is what Jack Welch, the management guru, the guy who turned around General Electric in the United States, said. It was about growing others. If you cannot point, or at least imagine yourself having a confusion as to the quality that you see at display and wondering who exactly will succeed you, rather than anointing somebody quietly and causing friction amongst others. If you can manage to address that as a leader, of course, the people decide at the end of the day in electioneering process, but a leader must be able to provide the vision that can marshal the population around each and every leader coming out everywhere and having the aspirations to be where he is. I think, to me, that is leadership. Okay. That is leadership.
Are we there yet amongst the African states?
I have seen very good encouraging signs. The young leadership coming into the fore. Kenya is a good example. I like the president, I like the deputy president. As I mentioned earlier, he's put together a formidable team. Yes, some said, yes, I think they're non-politicians, most of them. I think he probably wanted politicians to focus on representing the people who elected them,
right,
to advocate for the interest and those at national level, and for the cabinet to focus on delivering projects implementation. I suspect President Kenyatta is very, very concerned about implementation. I see him as very committed to delivering. That is why he even mentioned last week, Saturday, that he wants to deliver double-digit growth for this economy. He wants to create 1 million jobs every year for the next 5 years. That is the mark of a leader. Set the bar high. As they say, reach for the stars.
Yeah.
If you don't reach that, you'll land about, reach for the moon, and you will land among the stars. I think we are seeing very encouraging signs.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Excellency. This has been a great discussion about it, about the relations between Kenya and Botswana, and indeed your thoughts on Africa as a whole. I think these are the great discussions we need to be having amongst ourselves, even as it seems, we're going through a renaissance in the continent and saying, who are we, and identifying our identity and our voice. And we thank you very much for making the time to be with us.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. I have enjoyed the discussion. I hope people have learned something from it.
Indeed.
And I hope that our relations between Botswana and Kenya will prosper. We are committed to taking them to the next level.
Indeed. All right, thank you very much. And yes, we do have some great feedback that's coming in regarding that issue. And I like that His Excellency said it's not the ICC that's going to be the one that determines our relationship. As you can see, there's a lot that's happening between two countries. And we thank His Excellency John Moretti very much for coming here and talking to us about this and discussing all of these issues. And we thank you as well for your feedback. Your tweets and your texts were phenomenal this morning, so we thank you for that. We want to take a short break right now from our big interview. Do stay with us. KTN Sunrise Live continues after this short break.